Gilbert Lake Board meeting of April 16th. If we could first start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first we'll start with calling the meeting to order. And we have the review of the posted meeting notices and public hearing notices presented by Tom Hayes.
So notices for the public hearing of assessment, according to statutes, they were posted at the appropriate locations, the Water Resources Commissioner's office, the Township Hall on its website, and it was also mailed to all residents within the Special Assessment District on March 28th and published twice in a newspaper circulating within the township on the 31st of March and the 7th of April. So we've satisfied all the requirements for that.
Perfect. Next, we'll open public comment. If you'd like to come on up and speak at the podium, just give us your name and you can tell us anything you'd like. Oh, no? Are you sure? Okay, because this is the best place. No? Okay. All right. So then we'll go ahead and close public comment. Next, we'll go to approve the hearing of assessment meeting minutes of May 9th. We've all had a chance to look them over. Unless there's any changes, I'd look for a motion.
Do I say so moved, or?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
So, I make a motion, so moved.
Moved by Riparian Parker. Support by Clerk Brooke. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? That does pass. Next, we have our closed session meeting minutes of May 9th. Again, unless there's any changes, I'd look for a motion for that. Motion by Commissioner Gershenson.
Support?
Support by Clerk Brooke. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That also passes. So next, we'll review the 2023 lake maintenance. Who wants to present that one? Do you want to present, or is Aquaweed presenting?
Tom has something.
Thomas? Okay.
Was this one of the lakes we were able to obtain?
We have Blake from
Yeah, I was
Aquaweed
gonna
who's
say-
able to.
There we go.
Do you want to come on up
I
and?
could tell from the t-shirt.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Blake Cuthbert. I'm with Aquaweed Control. I've worked with the company for 14 years. During that time, I believe we've done Gilbert Lake every single year. I've been out there several times. I'll be taking over the lake manager duties from my boss, Dick Panagle. You might be familiar with him. He's been part of the lake management out there for decades now. He worked with Lawrence for a while. Now Jim's taken over, so I guess it's a good time to transition different lake managers as well. So I know that you're doing a 3-year SID now. I think that's a good idea, just to be prepared ahead of time rather than having to renew it every year. As far as the lake, it is a non-motor lake. A lot of the homes on the lake do have larger lots. We are subject to only being able to do 100 foot of the frontage for native plant species. So any sort of larger lots, you may have some of your lot that is left more natural than other areas. So I mean, that's just part of the permitting process that we have to follow. But as far as invasive species in the lake, we're able to treat all invasive species throughout the entire water body. So that's typically what our target is. I know a lot of people have some concerns with lily pads. They are protected unless they are interfering with recreational use, which would be boating, anywhere we're going to be swimming with a beach or a dock. So we're able to do in those areas, but as far as lily pads in other areas like around the island and uninhabited areas, we're leaving those natural. So we try to keep it.
Can you talk into the mic,
Oh,
please?
sorry.
Or just pull it
You can
towards
pull it
you.
towards you.
Does it come up at all? Okay. So as far as that, any questions for me?
I have a question for you.
Yep.
We had spoken just briefly when we introduced to each other before the meeting, and I'd asked about Phragmite on Gilbert Lake, and I know it's a problem in the area as an invasive, and I was asking if Aquaweed has services that can help address some of the Phragmite that is on Gilbert Lake.
Yeah, so in the contract, I put it for $160 per lot. So that would be assessed based on how many lots we would treat for Phragmites. It's per treatment, so sometimes there may be multiple treatments required to kill them. They are very difficult species to kill, but we have just employed a drone in our fleet this year. We're currently going through certification with the FAA and the Department of Ag to get certified using a drone, which we feel will be a better resource in treating Phragmites due to their height and density. So that is something that we are starting this year. Typically, Phragmite treatments would begin at the end of August or early September. That's when they're most susceptible. As far as removal of them, we don't do any cutting or removal of them. We could subcontract out to another company that would do that. I'm not sure what their costs would be for taking and removing them, but as far as spraying them and killing them, we do have that ability.
So we don't do aerial spraying here. Most of them do mechanically pull them out.
Okay.
Is this drone an aerial sprayer?
Yeah, it'd be an aero
So
sprayer.
what other option do you have other than
We would be able to do
aerial spray?
backpack spraying or any sort of spraying with a long line off of a, an ATV or a truck as well.
Okay. So that you don't do the mechanical one, though?
We don't do any mechanical removal, no.
Would that be something that each lake could decide on their own if they wanted aerial spraying?
Well, I just don't know what the definition of aerial, I think of aerial spraying as like airplanes, not necessarily
Yeah,
a
so it
drone.
is
I'm
very,
assuming you're,
yeah, it's
Something
very,
that
very new.
how does this operate? I mean, you're just a few feet above the Phragmites, or you?
Yeah,
like
so it's a
above the lake,
drone
or-
that's either programmed autonomously that we can do on the computer and track it based off of Google Earth, or we can manually fly it with a remote control. We have to get certified in the Class 107 FAA license as well as the aerial license for the Department of Agriculture as well.
We'll probably have
It's
to
like
check with our zoning,
right.
too.
Yeah,
Sure. I mean,
it's very new, so that's why there are a lot of different stipulations as well. I know the government will only allow certain drones as well to be used. So any Chinese-made drone is not allowed. We do have an American-made drone, so it is federally compliant with spraying. But as far as like local laws, that's still something we're looking into as well.
Like for our spongy moth, we don't do aerial spraying at all. It's a different type of treatment with a herbicide. So if we can't do aerial spraying, you would then,
It would be just like normal backpack spraying or with a UTV with a long hose.
okay, so
Yeah.
I can have Patty look into
Yeah, we
it.
still have the ability to do that. I mean, we're still going to be able to, treat Phragmites. Just we feel that aerial is kind of where it's moving to, future-wise.
And how far above, like Clerk Brooks' question, how far above? Like aerial overhead, way overhead, we don't do,
Yeah,
that won't?
No, we're talking like 10 feet above the ground type of thing, 10 or 15 feet.
to apply it directly on the Phragmite at
Correct.
that spot, not to like treat the whole lake.
No, it's very, very calibrated and precise where we're doing it. That way we're not getting any drift or anything.
If I understand the Phragmite, too, it's a long, tall plant that is very hard to like physically walk through with a backpack sprayer or something. So I think the concept is to get to the middle of an area that, let's say, is towards the end of our group here. It would be actually difficult for a human to walk through it. It's very, very thick. And
Right.
Yeah.
Spraying, it's just a easier way to get to it rather than the wand with a person.
Correct. Yeah, we would just be like a hover over the top of it, right in the center, and that way you're able to not have to go around the perimeter and miss sections, because a lot of times it might be so dense of an area you're unable to get to the center. So you might see a ring around the outside that's dead, but the center area is still alive. So that's one of the problems that an aerial drone could help solve.
Do we do spraying on? I know we do mechanical
Most of it's
removal.
mechanical.
Yeah, I
Most
don't
of
even
it's
know if we do spraying.
We
Okay.
have in the past.
We
but,
do?
Yeah. We have. I mean, presently, all the other lakes, I think, do a,
Mechanical.
mechanical removal.
Okay.
But
I'll look into
have-
our zoning to see if it's allowed and how it would be allowed. But I think that's why most do mechanical.
And my question, and I'm happy to, just learning more as we're sitting here, I'm learning about it. My question is more generally on Phragmite, and there was an area on Gilbert Lake that had a large patch that was a real problem area that I think some remediation has been done by homeowners, but there's other areas where it spreads, and
Right.
just like the other invasives, and as the riparian rep looking at the kind of health of the lake and the invasives and the weed control. If we get ahead of the Phragmite now, the lake will be better off and it'll be more economical to nip it in the bud rather than let it spread, and it could be incorporated into the larger, into the weed control professionally done, is my thought. But my reason for asking the question is to explore the idea and see what's available, not just as informational.
Oh, no, but Phragmite it's amazing that you're looking towards that. It's just that this is the first time we've heard non-mechanical as an option, because that is the typical option here. We have a lot of lakes that have Phragmite control. They do it, meaning like a boat or a person digs it out, it takes it out, there's no chemicals spread everywhere. It's the way that it's done on all the other lakes, and they're really clear and they're great. This is the first time I've heard somebody say they can't do that, so that's why I just want to make sure, if for some reason our zoning won't allow you to do what you're asking, how will you be able to remove the, will you
We would,
will you
if you requested
subcontract
it,
the
we would
mechanical?
subcontract,
Okay.
yeah.
So we still could do Phragmite
Correct,
control?
yeah.
Okay. So we'll find out, I'll reach out to our building department, zoning and planning, and find out what is allowed. If it's not, if it has to be mechanical, then we can talk to, about how to subcontract that, or if it can be sprayed, we'll look into it so you have all your options.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I got my note there to talk to Patty. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, so next we have confirmed the expenditures since last review of May 5th, 2023 through April 11th, 2024. Again, we have Tom Hayes.
So in the packet are a list of invoices that have come into the Lake Board to be paid since its last meeting. Typically, they're for notices, legal services, lake and property maintenance work, and all invoices are checked against contracts that we have on file and are looked over by the riparian representative and the clerk. And there's nothing on the ledger that's unusual or concerning, so.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
On here is the Seaside Seawalls payment that we made, last year, or spring of last year. So it's been a while. Yesterday, Seaside Seawalls contacted me and said there was an unpaid balance. And they reference an addendum for an upcharge for additional costs they incurred. You might recall this. There was an addendum that they did for additional backfill because they needed, the ground was low-lying and they needed more backfill to bring it up to the new seawall, which we approved. There was a second addendum they asked us to approve, which was to pay an upcharge. And their theory was that the contract was entered into many years previously. There was a delay based upon the permitting requirements, and they were concerned or complained about increased costs. You may recall that there were a lot of issues associated with this project. We did not agree to the upcharge addendum, but yesterday they sent us a new bill saying, and late fees saying that I think it was like $775 upcharge plus some late fees. So I wanted to update you as to that. I responded this morning indicating, again, that we had not approved an upcharge addendum and paid the original invoice, and the one addendum we agreed to. And that's where it stands presently. But I just wanted to mention that the vendor is not one I would recommend again for a variety of reasons, but this would be, I'll add that to my list. Well, that's where that's at, and if there's any changes, I'll update the board again.
Thank you. I would concur with that, and I haven't seen the addendum request, but I agree with your position on it and the position we've taken.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'd look for a motion to confirm. Motion by Riparian Parker, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Next, we have review the 2023 revenues, expenses, and fund balance report. Do you want to do that?
I can do it. This report was prepared by the Township's accounting department. There will be a final report issued at the beginning of next month. But as you can see, the Lake Board ran a deficit for the last fiscal year went into its fund balance, but we still have a reserve of approximately $7,000.
Any questions or comments? No? Thank you. So we'll next,
I guess maybe I could quickly mention is that
Sure.
part of the reason why, I mean, this reaches back in the last year, the reason why the expenditures were a little higher was there was additional work done to improve the safety of the weir. It was unanticipated originally. A new contractor performed that work, but brought the weir itself and spillover into the spillway into a much safer situation for the residents of the lake.
yes, that was definitely, you were pretty instrumental in that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I visited the site last night, yesterday evening, and it does look good, and the safety enhancements make a big difference there. I even mentioned that there had been a kayak with a father and a son that was down close to it, and they were somewhat concerned about them getting close to the area of the dam and the weir where it goes under, but knowing that the area had proper gating and safety enhancements on it, I know made the homeowner that I was talking with feel a little bit more comfortable, and it, I think made me feel more comfortable that it's just case in point to keep a young person and a pet or something like that from going in, and the safety enhancements. Not only they look like they've added to the safety, but the whole area looks good with the exception of some finishing, grading and fill. Right.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to reviewing and certifying the delinquent 2023 assessments to the assessor.
Okay. So every fall, the treasurer's office prepares a report containing all the delinquent accounts for the Gilbert Lake SAD. Because the Lake Board meets infrequently, these are handled administratively, but they still need to appear before the Lake Board for certification at its earliest meeting the following year.
I always like to point out that it's not that some people are choosing not to pay, it's that some like it to go on their taxes. So these are sometimes a conscious decision to let it go on to taxes and pay with less checks. They should be, are they on?
They're on.
Hello, hello.
Yeah,
Yeah, not talking loud enough.
sorry. I'll talk louder. I've never been told I'm quiet, so I will take that with, that's great. So again, these are, some people choose to have this run onto their taxes. Some just like less checks, less bills during the year, so sometimes it's done on purpose. So we just like to always mention that it's not always skipped. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'd look for a motion to certify. Motion by Commissioner Gershenson, support by Riparian Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. So next we have considering adoption of the 2024 budget. Do you want to go over this, Jim? Or do you want to do that, Tom?
I can start.
Okay.
So Jim and I worked on preparing this budget based on estimates and contracts that we have on file. I'll note that the insurance has gone up compared to last year. Because we're having a hearing of assessments, there's increased costs for noticing. The newspaper we previously have used in the past has gone out of business, so we've had to go to the Oakland Press, which charges a higher rate. But essentially, I think the big items to discuss is the infrastructure repairs, which Jim and I talked about earlier. I know you visited the sites and talked with the residents as to how they want to move forward, so maybe you could touch on that
Yes.
a little bit.
Yeah, I went and visited the site yesterday evening and spoke with Mark and Yvette Diamond, who live on the property that's most impacted by where the dam and seawall and where and bore the brunt of the construction damage there. And there's a request from them and a concern that the area has not been brought back to a level fill, and the grass seed that was put in never really took, and it looks incomplete. And when I looked at it yesterday, looking at it from the perspective that if the lake board or the community went in and disrupted the property in order to make these necessary repairs and safety improvements, that we should restore the property to its prior condition. It's been a long time. This project was started during COVID, and as we referenced, bad contractors and incompleted work, and it dragged out for a long time. But the goal, I believe, is still to restore that area and finish off this project to take it back to the condition that it was before the bulldozers and tractors came in. And after looking at it yesterday, it is not back to that condition. Honestly, it needs some leveling fill. I'm not a landscaper, but it needs to be somehow leveled and have grass put in it that grows and looks somewhat consistent with the existing lawn that's there. I look to be a very legitimate comment, and again, if the goal is to put it back to what it would have been like before, there's work to be done on that. And the area over the manhole, not manhole, but the access to the weir and the drain, there was a piece of decking on it that they would like replaced. So those are the items that are contemplated, I think, in the budget, some way to finally restore their piece of property, and to a lesser extent the two adjacent properties, to its kind of pre-existing condition. And so, and I believe maybe a site visit with a final, make a decision on what can be done to make the homeowners satisfied, and representatives of the lake board hopefully to okay it and come to a final conclusion for this project so that we can close it out. And in order to close it out, there's still some final expenses that are going to be incurred, and I think the money in the budget will allow for that to be done, and the exact details of how the landscaping is done is going to have to be done.
On the budgeted list, the various items that have been brought up and what remains to be closed out, and in order to have the lake board not go into a deficit that was split between 24 and 25.
Does that also include the final inspection, I think, that we had talked about from the testing firm to, in addition to the closeout process, to have the work inspected, approved, and
Are we talking
done?
about an engineer to
Right.
evaluate the function,
Yeah.
the weir itself?
Sorry, have we hired somebody? Because,
No.
We haven't hired anybody for that.
because what you just described sounds like a project in itself. Like, an engineer would have to determine how much, like, and it can't be a
So I think
public engineer, it has to be hired by the lake board.
when we talked about that, I think we were going to delay doing that until 26 or 27 when we.
Association.
This is not a lake board.
Sorry, we have a
Okay.
legal,
I just remind you, this is not technically a lake board project. This is something the lake board refused to undertake on an ongoing basis, this weir restoration. It's, originally, it was the responsibility of a private corporation on the lake that was tasked with maintaining this weir. The corporation itself failed to do that, and as a practical matter, the lake board agreed to do it, I believe, just this one time. We did agree to do this one project, complete this project. The restoration may be something that needs to be completed by the lake board. But as far as any further work on, evaluations by engineers or something, if that's gonna be another task, that's not something the Lake Board has undertaken at this point.
Even if it's connected to the project that the Lake Board did,
If it's,
like he's saying the fill and everything.
there was, like I said, the fill, I think, is part of this project. But I thought there was a discussion about this additional engineering work was gonna be an additional project.
Well, what it is we'd have to hire, so somebody has to actually do the project, like
Well, I think
file
there
for
is-
the fill permit, do the
Yeah, I
other
think
things.
I think he's right. There's two things. There's the restoration deck, which was related to the work previously done, and then a new work, which is
New
to hire
request.
an engineer, consulting engineer to evaluate the integrity of the weir. I sent Jim a contact person for the engineer that Meadow Lake uses, because that is handled as a Lake Board project. They have a weir,
And a bridge.
oh, yes, and a bridge to their island. And so we guess we're looking for some legal advice here as to, whether or not that part, I know this is a dicey one, whether engineer to look at the integrity of the weir, which impacts the lake, if it were to,
Well, I believe if it was an engineer that was retained to design the work initially, and the work that is being contemplated is for the engineer to go out and inspect the work that was done to ensure it was done correctly, that would be part of this existing project. But
not.
it doesn't sound like that's
Right,
what's being
it's not.
requested.
It's to evaluate the structural integrity of the weir, different and separate new project.
Yeah, and again, this is not, there's another entity that is responsible for maintaining this weir, and it was ultimately their responsibility, its responsibility to do that work. So any future design type evaluation by an engineer really should be something done by that private corporation. Or, if the homeowners association on the area wants to undertake it, that would be something, but that would be a separate project that the Lake Board has not formally undertaken at this point.
Okay. So there is, in fact, as you're saying, there is a pre-existing lake association that pre-existed prior to the Lake Board's existence, which I understand owns the weir. Oh, sorry. The microphones don't seem to be working that great. There is a pre-existing lake association.
Yes,
Turn it up, maybe? Maybe it's that the speakers, because they're on,
I think it's
And
tucked
usually-
sideways away
no,
from
but
it's
usually
talking
we're
sideways,
so
too.
loud that
Yeah,
we have
it
to
picks
sit
it up.
back. That's why I'm thinking maybe it's not turned up.
But is that louder? Not really. No, it's everybody.
No,
I think
it's, because
thank you for
usually
mentioning
it's
again.
so loud up here that,
So,
oh no.
there we,
Now we got it, okay.
maybe too much.
I like that porridge in the middle. No, it's always, we always have them up here though.
Yeah. How's that? No, not too low. Oh, that sounds good. Oh,
In between those.
right. More evidence
There you
for
go.
why we need a
That-
project to
this
This
update
is
our
right.
technology.
This is what we're used to, so you're right, it was not up as high.
So there is this pre-existing Gilbert Lake Association that was tasked with maintaining the lake and maintaining the weir. The Lake Board was created to maintain the lake. The Lake Association is still out there, and we'll have to work on that. The weir does need some professional review, but
Does that other company still exist?
I think it's largely inactive,
I think its filings are up to date, but it doesn't
but
really
it's
do
not
anything.
doing anything. It's got no funding. I don't
Right.
know if there's any funding in place. At least that's what was represented when the Lake Board was asked to undertake the reconstruction of the collapsing weir.
Right, and that's still the status now, and that's a project that we, as the riparians on the lake, need to undertake, reactivating the Gilbert Lake Protective Association, I believe is the name of it.
Yes.
And it still has board members and different people listed that have either passed away or moved from the lake. So it does need to be updated and properly funded, and it may very well be the body to take on some of those other things.
And in supporting our observation, by the way, the proposed budget does not have anything in here for the engineering study presently. It does have in here the cost, projected cost to do the repairs caused by the prior seawall work.
Thank you, that's what I was saying. Okay.
And by the way, we're looking to, at this stage here, this is the stage where we're reviewing the budget. We have a 4-year budget here set here, but we're only asked to adopt the 2024 budget and authorize the chair to execute related contracts subject to legal review. We're not actually approving the 25, 26, 27 budget, but they exist in order for us to project the necessary funding for the assessment, which comes next.
Are there any other questions or comments about the 2024 budget?
Oh, Paul, we're supposed to comment earlier, can't comment now.
The public
It's on the
comment.
budget. This is on the budget.
No, but the public comment was
Well-
earlier when I kept saying, please come up,
There-
please come up.
There is
I
a
can't
second
say
hearing
anything.
of assessment, which will come next, and
Okay.
you could address it then.
Yeah, because there's a
This has to
public,
do with the budget.
Yeah. Which
right,
will-
so the public comment is when we needed to hear your comments.
I'm sorry, I'm not,
That's why I kept saying,
fairly-
come on up.
okay, that's fine. Excuse the procedural issue, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
But
so
there-
for 24, we're going to vote on this one, but there is a hearing for the
Assessment.
future assessment 4-year budget. And
Yep.
because there's a public hearing, we'll have another public comment at that time, where you can come on up at that time.
So if I have a comment on the budget, when do I speak?
It would have been, for
They'll
this
open
budget, it would have
the
been
public
already.
hearing will be open in a few minutes, and at that point, you'd come up and speak.
For the future budget, yeah. Okay, so for this current budget of adopting the 2024 budget, do we have any other questions or comments? If not, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2024 budget as presented and authorize the chair to execute necessary contracts, subject to legal review and her discretion.
Motion by Clerk Brooke, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so now we're going to the hearing of assessment. And first, we'll start with the review of the purpose of the hearing of the assessment. We'll start with Tom.
So the purpose of the hearing of assessment is to hear any comments or objections to the proposed assessment roll, which is in place to help fund weed treatments, lake maintenance, things of that nature.
Okay, so then before the public comment, we have the presentation of the Gilbert Lake Supplemental Assessment Roll. That also.
Now note that it's supplemental was an error, it's just the assessment roll.
Oh, okay. All right. So the Gilbert Lake Assessment Roll.
So the assessment roll is going to be for a 4-year period. Individuals that are assigned a full unit of benefit will be assessed $644.13 per year, and for a partial unit of benefit, it'll be $77.29. And then I'll just note that it'll be a decrease compared to last year's, where we had the past 4-year assessment roll and then the supplemental assessment roll.
So now I'm going to open the public hearing for the discussion of this budget assessment going forward. Anybody who wants to come on up and talk, come on up.
I still think I'm procedurally wrong, but okay. My name is Paul Kopsis. I'm a riparian in Gilbert Lake. We have this ongoing discussion regarding the watercraft controls. My question has to do with the, let's call it governance of that in the event that there is some abuse of whatever ends up being put in place. Do we need to allocate costs? Because there will be a cost for us needing to manage any potential abuse of the new watercraft controls for whatever they may be. So I just wanted to put it on record here that there will be costs for signage, there will be costs for, let's call it governance or control over those issues, and I don't know who covers those costs. So that, it's more of a question, not a request for budget.
Good question. So this is a township ordinance. If the board decides to adopt an ordinance concerning Gilbert Lake, and therefore it's the township's obligation to post the required notice. Plans are underway for the proper signage and authorizations, to post the notices. It's not a Lake Board issue. As an ordinance, it's something that is subject to the enforcement protocols that the township has.
One thing that we do tell people, though, that although we as a township pay the cost of installing and putting up the signs, as it is a private lake and our police department does not have any motorcraft or watercraft, the places that do choose to have enforcement go through the county sheriff's office. They do have contracts where you set up dates based on their availability. I know some where they're connected more to a public lake such as Upper Long Lake. They do have the sheriff's office there on July 4th, on big weekends like that. But otherwise, to Martin's point, there's no cost for the signage. It would be a matter of if you have a lot of people who start speeding randomly on your lake, which yours is self-contained, yours probably won't run into the issues of Upper, Lower Long Lake, and Forest Lake where people from West Bloomfield have access. So you luckily won't take on some of the expenses that the other lakes will have to deal with. Hopefully that helps.
It's part of it.
Okay. So then, is there any other public comment related to the assessment? Please come up to the microphone about this four-year budget.
No, it's not about the budget. You're talking about an ordinance.
Okay,
What ordinance are you talking about?
so we can talk offline after. It's not a Lake Board issue. It's a township issue that we'll talk
Right.
later, as soon as we're done with the Lake Board. All right. So next we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on the public comment. And next we have consider approval of the resolution confirming the Gilbert Lakes assessment role. And unless there's any questions or comments, I'd look for a motion. Motion by Riparian Parker, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Is there any new business
Well,
you want to talk about?
sure. Yeah, at previous Lake Board meetings, I've given a quick update on the ordinance that we're discussing. The township, since 1970, it has had an ordinance in place prohibiting motorboats or internal combustion engines and permitting electric engines. The township, about a couple of years ago, went to the Department of Natural Resources, who has the authority to permit us to regulate watercraft, and asked for an enhancement in our ordinances to continue with prohibiting motorboats, but to add a prohibition concerning high-speed electric watercraft and to require a slow, no-wake speed. After a lot of work on that, participation by a lot of people from Gilbert Lake and the other 9 lakes involved, the DNR came back a couple of weeks ago and authorized the township to implement an ordinance that only prohibits slow, no-wake operation of a vessel. It did not authorize us to continue to prohibit the use of internal combustion engine motorboats on any of the lakes. As I was mentioning earlier, the township is considering the adoption of this. It will be discussed at the next board meeting to consider adoption of the ordinance the DNR has allowed us to do, slow, no wake, and consider whether any additional appeal or actions would be taken by the township. That'll be at our next board meeting, which is Wednesday, April 24th. And it is the township board that decides ordinances, the township board that funds the signs, the township board that and its delegates that enforce ordinances. I'm only mentioning it here because it involves Gilbert Lake, and we're here talking about Gilbert Lake, but it's not a Lake Board issue.
Well, and also, we didn't, as a township, we only responded to the requests of the riparians asking for this. The township wasn't suggesting it aside from what they wanted. So we facilitated. I get it's a township board ordinance, but just to make sure everybody knew, it was the riparians on the lake that wanted it. Otherwise, we would not have.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
certainly been an
We don't want to put
unanimous-
rules that you don't want on your private
yeah,
lakes.
Unanimous request that we
Yeah.
maintain them as no motorboat and add
Right.
some additional safety for high-speed electric motors.
Yeah, and there was, what, about 170 some residents?
175 people showed up in
175
person.
residents,
And
yeah.
many, many additional written comments, all in support, except for one, all in support of continuing the ordinance.
So that will be April 24th here at the Township Board meeting. So next we have, unless there's any other new business, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion
moved.
by Commissioner
missed it.
Gershenson.
Support.
And support by Clerk Brick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
So
That
we're
does
not
pass.
back till